The shock of this revelation is almost too much for Simon to process, but he still will not allow his older brother from attacking his friends and newfound family. They start to fight one another, and it's pretty clear that the Grim Reaper's weaponry has no effect on Simon's body whatsoever. And luckily, Wonder Man is actually able to subdue and defeat the Grim Reaper. The resistance of Simon's body to the Grim Reaper's attacks, and not to mention his crazy glowing red eyes, really prompted the more science-y of the Avengers to ask some serious questions about his resurrection, and the brightest minds of the Avengers, including Hank McCoy and Tony Stark, Black Panther, start to thoroughly examine him. What they discover is that Zemo's process didn't kill Simon. No, it didn't kill him. What it did was transform him from a human being made of solid matter to a being made and comprised of entirely of ionic energy. His apparent death was no more than a deep state of hibernation that had him enter into a metamorphosis into this being of ionic energy. Simon was no longer human, and his zombification was no more than his brain acclimating to his new form, his new anatomic makeup. There was no one else like him anywhere. How could he possibly relate to anyone else? This storyline is great because it really explores loss, grief, and the consequences of trying to defy death. It also really highlights the absolutely complicated and complex relationship of the Grim Reaper and Wonder Man. The Grim Reaper, this whole ordeal puts the Grim Reaper on this long path of obsession with bringing his brother back to life. It ends with tragic consequences. Wonder Man joins the Avengers in a full-time capacity, and his relationship with the Vision slowly starts to improve. But this is over time. For several months after his resurrection, Simon really struggles with PTSD and claustrophobia. Obviously, he's terrified of dying in battle from, dying in battle. And of course, he has these strong feelings for the Scarlet Witch that are slowly growing and developing, but Simon's really ashamed of these feelings, and he keeps them to himself because she's married to the Vision. He has begun to really respect despite these conflicting feelings of bitterness for, copying his brain patterns. But he knows it wasn't the Vision's fault. But still, it's weird. Super weird, He also meets a young Carol Danvers at this time while she was still Miss Marvel. And they begin a bit of a flirtation. They just kind of flirt with one another here and there. But his closest friend and companion turns out to be the Beast, Hank McCoy. See, Hank McCoy is very cheerful, friendly, outgoing, and it's a really good balance to Simon's more introspective nature. It helps him to come out of his shell more. After Simon was living in Avengers Mansion for a while and getting over his fear of death after battling Korvac, the government decided there only really needed to be 7 official members of the Avengers team. And if you did not make that roster of 7, you could not live in Avengers Mansion. Now, they made Wonder Man a reserve Avenger, like an alternate, but he couldn't live there anymore. His past crimes were forgiven. He's an alternate Avenger, but he needed something else to do. He needed a job and a place to live. So he starts thinking, maybe I'll become an actor. That sounds like me. I've got a lot of charisma. Why not? Wonder Man stars in a variety of minor roles before just straight up moving out to Hollywood. He did an off-Broadway show called City of Angst that closed after one night. So there was that. And then he got the role of Muscle Man in a children's show called Uncle Elmer. And he was kind of just, like a caveman. And it was a very humiliating role for him. He ends up just being the punchline to all the jokes. He ends up losing the job, though, when one of the kids rips off Uncle Elmer's wig and it gets pinned on Simon, so he gets fired. Simon was still aiding the Avengers when they needed him, and on one occasion, he saves a young girl by the name of Cindy Newts. This rescue of Cindy would end up having a major impact on her, change the course of her life, and she became a staunch supporter and lifetime fan of Simon Williams' Wonder Man. When Falcon leaves the team, Simon is actually offered a seat at the table again, and he takes it. While he's back with the team, he finds out that his old company, the industrial munitions plant, had been taken over by the Magia. So he gets a hold of the guy he left in charge, his friend Madison Dash. Simon decides he's going to go to the plant and get some evidence, and Madison says he wants to go with him. Simon objects, but Madison insists that it was his company too. He deserves to go with him and try to get the evidence they need to take them down. So they go, but soon after they get there, they are totally busted. The Magia knows they're there, and the Magia blows the building up. They try to get away, however, they don't get away enough, and they're caught in the blast. Simon survives, however, Madison is fatally wounded. He does not make it. This has a huge impact on Simon. Not only does he feel the weight of his father's business, his legacy being destroyed, but he also has the weight of an innocent person, his friend's death, on his shoulders, a death that he was unable to prevent. Simon continued his acting career, but had difficulty balancing the two lives. He does start getting larger roles, like he got this reoccurring role as TV's Monster Man that was clearly based on Ben Grimm's The Thing. But the show ends up getting canceled mid-season when Ben Grimm finds out that this alien Hulk creature called Zemnu was using it to control people's minds. TV, controlling minds, go figure.
Disney and Kathleen Kennedy are gonna get you!